So a few years ago, I did a collection video on handhelds before I moved. However, over the past few years, I have gotten a few more handhelds over the past few years. So I will be showing my updated collection so far. So first we have the Game & Watch series. Now, where's the green one? Oh. So for those of you that don't know, this is a revision of the original Game & Watch from the 80s where where they had I think they said 60 games for each system. So each system had at the time each system had one game. You have if you wanted to play a game, you had to buy another one. This is a revision of that, except it's got two or three. This one's got 3 games. I don't know if they're charged. No. Turns out this one's not charged. Oh, this one seems to be dented. Yeah, I guess I had this in a drawer with all my other handhelds, so I guess this one is a bit dented. Both of them are dead. So, next we have the Game Boy Advance. Now, if some of you that grew up in the 90s probably had one of these. Honestly, I don't think we'd have any of the other handhelds that we have now if it wasn't for the Game Boy, because now, unlike all the other handheld systems that they did, like Sega and Atari, the Atari Lynx, Sega Genesis, they had they kind of had higher power games. They had color games, and they had a few sets of batteries with it. But from my research, people have bought more Game Boys is because they were cheaper. Even though these had 4 batteries, the batteries lasted a long time compared to Sega Game Gear, Sega Nomad, Atari Lynx. The batteries did not last as long as these, where you got I think for these, I think you got over I think you got 15 hours of play on this one. I took the batteries out though because I didn't want because I took the batteries out all the ones that I have that has batteries in them, because I did not want them to leak, those white stuff that comes out of the batteries when you don't use them for a long time. I wanted to avoid that. Now nowadays I'd say some kids will probably find this boring, but I do believe kids got to understand, though, that they would not be having their Switches. They would not be playing their Switches if it wasn't for the Game Boy. Because a whole lot of other handheld generations came along the way after the Game Boy and was led to the Switch over the years. Now, after the Game Boy, next I have the Game Boy Pocket. Smaller version of the original Game Boy. The only difference is size, different screen design, right here. Instead of the game being puke green, it was actually, I think that was actually a little more black and white. Let me show you the difference. No. Oh, I forgot. I took the batteries out of these. So, I don't exactly have batteries in these. No. I bought this last year at QuadCon. So, I'm going to tell you right now, though, if you go to a convention, Comic-Con, QuadCon, whatever. We check the battery pack before you buy it, because when I checked the battery pack, I realized that the battery pack, the batteries had white stuff on it. My dad cleaned it out as much as he could, and I don't really see any white stuff now, and it works. However, the button does not work. The start button does not work. So it'll play the game, but you can't play it because I can't really play the game on this because the start button is not working. So it can't start the game. And the games for these two look like this. This is Star Wars Return of the Jedi, but the cartridge itself kind of looked like the smaller version of the... They kind of look like smaller versions of the original Nintendo cartridge, you know what I mean? Because it's gray. It might not have the same shape, but it's still gray. But the next I have in my collection is the Game Boy Color. Now I have heard that the reason why they made the Game Boy Color was to buy Nintendo more time to make a better Game Boy. So I don't have the Game Boy Light because I hear it's very hard to get because they were only available in Japan. But that one had a backlight. However, this one does not have a backlight. And this thing plays games perfectly fine. And I guess most of the time I only play with this one if... I guess I'll play... I guess I'll use this to play games like Little Mermaid Pinball and stuff like that. Like, just for an excuse to play with it. Because I guess Game Boy Advance SP is backwards compatible to all these. Speaking of which, I would be showing the Game Boy Advance SP right now, except I can't find it. So, I was looking all over for it. I have no idea what I did with it. I kind of wonder if I left it in one of my relatives' cars, because I remember bringing it along going somewhere. So I wonder if I left it there. But yeah, we're not going to be showing that one because I can't really find it. However, now I do believe this was a little hard to get. This is the Game Boy Micro. They've only sold like 2 million of these units. And the issue that some people say is that the screen was a bit too small, which it pretty much is compared to all the other Game Boys. Compare that to the Game Boy Color. And the Game Boy Advance SP screen was, I think, a little bigger than that. Bigger than this, slightly. Battery's still good. Now, other than size, this one had, like, you could adjust, like, the backlight with this to make it a little brighter. And I had one of these as a kid. This was kind of almost my last Game Boy as a kid. And I lost the charger to this, and I couldn't use my Game Boy Advance SP charger. So, but nowadays, like, I kind of see why people complain that the screen's too small. And this thing is really small for my hands. But when you're like a 9-year-old kid, you have like really small hands, so it's not really an issue for you. Moving on. So, next in my collection is the original Game Boy, which some people, they would would probably describe this as a Game Boy Advance SP on steroids, physically and electronic wise. Because I mean, the design on the top looks exactly the same as a Game Boy Advance SP, but except it's like they added, it's like decided to make it wider. However, I did buy one of these before, and it was gray, and I didn't have it for very long. And at one point, I bought it at a game store, and I was at my sister's friend's house, and I couldn't find it until I found out that it fell between so it was like between the refrigerator and the counter, so it was like right in between. When I pulled it out, the top right here broke off. And so I'd say be very careful. If you buy one of these, be very careful with them, because these could break easily. These can be a bit fragile compared to the Nintendo DS Lite. Speaking of which, they decided to make a smaller and prettier version of it. So like, I think instead of like copying off what they did with the Game Boy Advance, like the original, they decided to make it a whole lot smoother, a whole lot better, and easier to carry around. And it was backwards compatible to Game Boy Advance games, which I forgot to mention in this one. So they both have slots for Game Boy Advance games. However, the charger on this one is a bit different than the original Nintendo DS. Nintendo DS, the original, was it had the same charger as Game Boy Advance SP. However, this one decided to go with a different charger. And after DS Lite, they decided to stop with backwards compatibility to Game Boy Advance games, and they made the Nintendo DSi. And here's it's got a game in here. Oh, got Lego Star Wars Complete Saga. Now, the Nintendo DSi, you were able to, I guess they had like the Nintendo DS camera, and you're able to like doodle with it, but nowadays it's not really as impressive as it used to be. Even the original, I forgot to mention, had PictoChat, but nowadays you can text with your phone, you can message on Facebook Messenger. It's not as impressive as it used to be, but at the time, I found out from other YouTubers that let's say you were a kid and you were in a classroom, you have the DS or the original. If you had like the original DS or the DSi, actually I don't know if DSi had PictoChat, but if you had a DS and you had PictoChat and you were in a classroom with one of your other friends, you were able to like text your friend from right across the room, and I don't know why. I think this one's actually missing a stylus, and I have no idea where it went. But next is I'm not gonna go for the next DS. So this next here is my PSP. Still works. Battery doesn't really last as long, and I think for 2004, this is pretty impressive. I think this is pretty impressive for 2004, and I kind of wonder why didn't I get one of these as a kid. But I guess at the time, I guess when I was a kid, and even if I did ask for it, I don't think my parents would have been able to afford it, because I found out the DS was like $150, which was like cheap, was like $100 cheaper than this. This was like $250 at launch, and and you had to get SD cards to save your memory. Nowadays, I think you can get this like between $50 to $100. But I guess I, at the time, didn't really know much about PSP or Nintendo DS because I had Game Boys. And I think at the time, if I asked for a Nintendo DS or a Game Boy for my birthday or Christmas, at the time, I don't think my parents would have been able to afford one. I could be wrong, though. However, you can now get these at your I don't know, like discount video game stores like Video Games Etc. or Video Game Corner, or there's another video game store that I've heard of that was in Arkansas that I went there. I can't remember what it was called. But anyway, this is literally like taking a PS2 on the go when it comes to games, but the background is like for a PS3. So it's kind of weird that the background looks like PS3 quality, but yet when you play the games, it's like taking a PS2 on the go. There are some games that are exactly the same as the PS2 version, and the games look like this. It's a UMD disc, and you open the top like this. At least with the original. This is the original. This game is Lego Indiana Jones, which is exactly the same as like the PS3 version. It blows my mind that some of these PSP games are exactly the same as the ones on PS3 or PS2. But that's some of them, not all of them. Spider-Man 2 on PS2, and this one is not really the same game. And I think it's because the graphics in Spider-Man 2 was probably too advanced for a PSP. So they probably went for so I think they decided to go for like the same concept as Spider-Man 1 on PS2. And I'd say the game on this one it's still fun to play. When it comes to PSP, I play this all the time. However, the game is short enough to I think get it done, to be done in almost an hour or around an hour, maybe over an hour. But that's a short game for a Spider-Man PSP game. Now I've said this before in a different video, but for those of you that haven't seen my previous videos, I did have a PlayStation Vita, which got to a point though where there really wasn't very many games out there, and it was like I've reached the end of the line. I couldn't really get anywhere further with it. It's I only managed to get 10 games out of it. So then I thought, how about I want to do something. I want to try something different. And don't get me wrong, the PS Vita was the coolest system I've ever played, but it was the fact that I couldn't really get very much games out of it. Now, at the time, the Switch was already out, but it was $300, and there really wasn't really much games in my interest, because mostly at the time they were coming out with just Mario games. Mario this, Mario that, it was all Mario. So I was like, nah. I get. Oh, and plus it's backwards compatible to the because it's backwards compatible to the original DS. I got the 3DS. Now, this is not the 3DS this is not my original 3DS that I had. This is I originally had the new 3DS. No, I had the original 3DS XL, but I traded for a new 3DS XL a year or two ago because it was a couple of years ago, because I kind of regret doing that because I could have just kept that in my collection. But I wanted to try the new 3DS because I found out that the 3D is a little better, and every time I turn on the 3D on the original 3DS XL, like immediately I'd feel dizzy and nauseous because of how terrible the 3D looked. However, this kind of does the same, but not as easily, not as quick. I can go through at least one mission without turning off the 3D on here. Now is the 3DS is the 3DS still great to buy in today's standards? Even though we have the Switch that plays console level games, yes, because of its backwards compatibility to this, you could get so much games out of this. I went from switching to from switching to the Vita from the Vita to this. I went from 10 games to over 50 games. I think I already have like 60 or maybe over 60 games of like with 3DS and the DS all together because of how many games there were out there for the original DS. And I got so many games to play on this compared to the Vita because there wasn't very many games out there, and you could not, and the Vita was not backwards compatible to PSP UMD discs because they had cartridges like the DS with a 3DS. It kind of looked more like this. This is a Switch game, but it looked a bit more like that. And after... Now, next on my list is the original 2DS. Now, I get that they were like trying to market this towards kids or people that just don't really have like a lot of money to like spend on like good systems like these. However, I still think the design here was a stupid idea because you could because this is like very much exposed to like the screen getting dirty or damaged, not being able to actually protect it. It's one of those systems where you're just like why would they make a system straight like that? But I guess what they were going for though was little kids getting their first console in a cheaper way. But that's kind of the problem because I can imagine kids accidentally dropping these or ruining these so easily because the screen is exposed. And kids are not really the most careful. If I were a parent and this came out, I would not buy my kid a flat DS. I would have gotten him something like this or the original 3DS because you're able to close the screen and protect it. I mean, I don't care if this thing is cheaper. The weird thing about it is that this actually, compared to the 3DS, this one feels like a toy. This actually feels like a toy. Now, yeah, this one's dead too. Like I said, most of these systems are dead. Now, let's see, what do I have left? So, I got this one at GameStop. You can get like a few of these, but I think this is old. Like, I think this is like an old toy game, and it's The Little Mermaid. It doesn't have batteries. Oh, it does have batteries in them. So I don't remember what you're supposed to do because I haven't touched this in a while. Oh. So I guess from what I'm looking at is that you make aerial move up and down, but I'm not sure what you're supposed to do. It's been a while it's been a long time since I've played this, so I don't really know what to do. But I think I don't know if this is like old. Oh, I guess it came out 5 years ago. So I thought this would. I thought this was like a. I thought this was like an old handheld system that they just decided to like resell at GameStop, because there's also Spider-Man, and I think they have Aladdin too. But it was something that I just wanted to put in my collection, but it was but when I first played it, I couldn't even figure out how to play it, so I decided to not like I decided to just put it in the collection for now. And the last system, which I still play a lot, and I know a lot of people do, is the Switch Lite. Now, there is going to be a sequel to the Switch. It's called Switch 2, and from what I've seen from the commercial, I think it is a huge improvement. Because the other Switches, these are actually this is the Switch Lite, but the Joy-Cons, it's like you would slide them on, and when I had the original Switch, it kind of felt like they would snap off if you weren't careful. But from this improvement that I've seen because they showed the design, and the Joy-Cons, though they're I think they're magnetically connect, and they click instead of sliding them, they just click, which I think that's a huge fix, because you don't have to worry about breaking the Joy-Cons anymore. Because before you had to slide them off, and they were plastic. Honestly, I think they should have made those Joy-Cons metal. However, I think Joy-Cons would have made it. I think metal Joy-Cons would have made it more expensive. But anyway, with this Switch, I'd say the battery does last longer than the original Switch. The original Switch, the battery would drain out like that. Because, okay, yes, you're playing high-powered games that are console level, home console level games on here. So I guess the more power you have on a system, the faster the battery will drain, or the less the battery will last. However, the Switch Lite, I'm guessing it's because there's a little less power, and it's only handheld mode. This system will the battery to this system will actually last longer. I've played this system. I've been able to play this system almost all. I could play this for hours. I think its lifespan is 7 hours. I think 6 to 7 hours. I looked up the battery life for the original Switch. It has said it is literally the same amount of hours as a PSP. It's like this goes on, the average lifespan for battery is 3 to 4 hours. I'm going to show you why here in a second, if I can get this open. Hold on, got it open. Because the battery is small. This is a pretty small battery, and it's in a system that plays high-powered games, like PlayStation 2 level games. So it kind of makes sense that the battery does not last very long in this system. But that was the same with the original Switch. Now this is the Switch Lite, and from what I've seen, the battery lasts a lot longer on this one than the original Switch. Apparently, I did kind of wonder for a long time if I ever wanted to like switch to the Switch OLED, because it had like 4K, and I heard it had like better quality than the other two. However, it plays the same games, and I only play it on handheld. I only play it as a handheld anyway. The only reason why I'm still going to get the Switch 2, even though it's not fully even though it's not like a handheld only system, is because of its backwards compatibility to the original Switch. So when the Switch 2 comes out, yes, I'll buy it, because one, the screen looks a lot bigger. It has much better. I don't know what the games are going to be like for the Switch 2, but because of its backwards compatibility, I'll be playing the same games on a better looking system with better quality. Oh, I missed one. Sorry about that. So this, I wouldn't qualify this as a handheld. More of it's like something for your phone that I bought. So hold on. So you like unhook this, and then you like take this thing out. There you go. So you put your phone in here, and you can play on your phone as a handheld. Like you could play your phone games, or you can play your phone games on this, or I guess Xbox Pass if you can download it on your phone. But yeah, that's what this is for. However, not all of them, but so not all phone games work for this. I've had plenty. I don't know why, but I've had. So, I don't know if they still have it, but they had Lego Star Wars Complete Saga on the phone. It would work on this one. This would work for it. But then when you try to play Lego Star Wars Force Awakens, this wouldn't work on it. Which I found that stupid. It's like, it's a Lego game. Why would this not work for it? If it's a Lego game, why would this not be compatible for that game? And why is it only compatible for some games? But yeah, that's my collection so far, and whenever I get a few more handhelds, I might do another collection video after a year or two, maybe months, maybe a few years. And next time I will have the Game Boy Advance SP. I'll try to find the Game Boy Advance SP, and my next collection video, I will include it. So, see you next time.